This is Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer, a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. Visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media. And to support journalism in beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. I'm Preston Thoeny of Runhouse Brewing, and this week I'm glad to be talking to my friend, Kyle Harrop of Horse Aged Ales. We'll get into it in just a minute, but first, this message.
First Tee is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. They've been working with brewers on a wide range of ingredients and delicious beers. First Tee combines the flexibility of order sizes with the experience you need to create innovative and successful tea beers. They get you the most direct from farm tea selection, so you are working with flavorful and consistent products. You can find more about First Tee's collaborations with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting blog.firsttee.com. That's blog.firsttea.com.
All right, Kyle, how have you been?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing good. It was, while I was at work today, it came to my mind that I don't think I've seen you in a couple of years now, since pre-pandemic.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody in Georgia yesterday about favorite cocktail bars, and I told them mine was Undertow in Phoenix, and then I realized the last time I saw you was in that basement, and it is not in the coffee shop anymore. I think it's part of Century Grand now.
Yeah, they've been moving it around, and he's got a couple more openings, so you'll have to come back out.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Next time the Lakers go to Phoenix to beat the Suns, maybe.
I don't know if I'm ready. We might get into basketball, but I'm still kind of hurt from the games this week.
Yeah.
Well, I figured to start off, I assume anyone listening, anyone even tangentially in the beer scene is aware of Horace and what you do. But for the few that have missed out, if you don't mind, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and about what Horace does.
Yeah, so Horace has been around almost 8 years. It'll be 8 years next month. I started it with a business model that I could still work my aerospace job full time with. And by doing that, it definitely forced my hand on a niche market. Because it's very small. Even now, after expanding my club 3 different times, I have a bottle club similar to like a wine club. I have 600 members, and I release a lot of beers that are single barrel, like coming out of 153-gallon oak barrel, and there's not even enough for one per person. So I have 2 different tiers now, so 400 in the top tier and 200 in a new tier that was this past year. And I cannot emphasize the word small, but really focus on stouts and barley wines, and I've been doing these 100% crystal malt beers recently. Definitely known for adjuncts and using crazy barrels at this point, kind of pushing the envelope on things, and a lot of collaborations, as you know.
Yeah, I know. So I guess maybe this is just something I personally want to know with the struggles of running a bottle club. Runhouse this year announced a 2-tier system. Similar to you, so I didn't know you were doing one of those too. Do you find that is something that you would recommend to new brewers, or to at least barrel centric brewers?
No, I don't think I would. In other situations, especially a brewery that has higher production capacity, a club comes with a lot of entitlement and people feeling like that they're owed something a lot of the time. the flip side of that is I've had some members part of it from the beginning that are super loyal, and I've loved to get to know them over the last half decade. But if you were in a position, you're opening with like a 30-barrel brew house or 15-barrel brew house, and you're churning out the whole spectrum of styles, and not just focusing on a few things like I do, I would advise against it, and I do advise against it when people ask me all the time.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. In one hand, you're getting the beer out to the people that actively pursue it, but on the other hand, there's people that don't get to try it because of it.
Yeah, and that's been I think my hang up from day one is, I probably get 20 to 30 people emailing or messaging a week, asking where they could find my beer. They're visiting from out of town, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just something I've really struggled with because I just flat out don't have enough beer.
Yeah.
And with expanding my club, I haven't really had a public bottle release in a couple of years now because there's just not enough bottles to go around.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
Yeah, that I could answer that question. It would depend on who the audience was. How's that? If it was a really niche, stout and barley wine producer, like what Brad's doing with Private Press, it's amazing. That's super cool club. If you started out like I did, which a lot of people don't know, I was 100% mixed firm. I would highly advise against that right now because that style of beer just isn't as popular as it once was, and seeing a lot of friends disappear even this year that followed that model. So I think depends on the person, depends on the brewery.
Well, what about 2023? Do you have anything in barrels and tanks that you're particularly excited for?
Definitely. So I only released one of my 100% crystal malt beers this past year. I'll have the very first one I put into barrels hopefully bottled here in the next few months, a double barrel version and a dark version. So really excited about that. I got my second triple oaked stout on the horizon. A lot of cool just stout and barley wine. I mean, my barrel library is quite extensive now, and I got some crazy stuff. A lot of the BTAC series and the Pappies and Elijah Craig age statements over 20 years and Knob Creek 18. Just a lot of cool stuff. Very fortunate to get my hands on. So
yeah. How many barrels do you have filled at any given time these days?
It really depends. Right now, are you talking sour or clean beer or all of it?
Give me all of it.
All of it, I'd say right now is about 300-400.
Jeez.
And when I started, I had, I think it was 120 mixed firm, sour barrels, and that was it. And then, the stout library at one point was as small as 2 dozen. So it's definitely grown, along with, my amount of club members. It's kind of gone hand in hand.
Yeah, in that vein, you were talking about how we've seen some of our friends sour and funky breweries start going the wayside, which is tragic because it doesn't seem to be reflective of their skill.
Not at all.
The best in the country are still unable to stay open, and we've all seen that style has been harder to at least make a profit on in the way you once could. But you might be too close to this. I've been seeing the same with these big stouts, and yet you are able to continue to succeed and grow as a brand and a company. What do you think that is that makes you? I don't know about bulletproof, but go against the flow and put out, whether it's a recession, a pandemic, be able to put out these, high end kind of niche beers and still demand the respect and the desire from the audience.
Yeah, I think like the one word answer is small. Just, it's a small operation. I think, the name has grown over the years. I did the festival circuit for a solid 5 years. I saw you in Florida and Illinois and all over the place. I think that really helped, and people are genuinely excited to get in that membership lottery, and I retain the majority, which is awesome, and that makes me feel really good about people are enjoying my beers. And I think from what I've noticed with my own beers too is a lot of people actually drink them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just like go straight to secondary market. And I think a lot of that is, I have like 1 bottle limits on a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's kind of like a situation where, if you don't open that bottle, you're never going to try it. So, and I think that weeds people out too. If someone got into my club just looking to flip for trading or that kind of thing, it's not the easiest thing to do. I have bottle pickups at random. They're about once a month, and I just kind of go with my schedule, and I do allow proxies. But when you factor in shipping to your friends across the country after you get bottles and everything else, it wouldn't be worth it if you're not drinking the beers, is where I'm getting at. So I think for me, it's really cool to see my bottles actually open.
Yeah. And I mean that, builds that relationship with those consumers too, who actually are drinking the beer and liking it.
Absolutely. And that's, I think for my club, a big part of it that I enjoy is I pretty much know everybody, and I've been at every single bottle pickup, and just having those one-on-one conversations and having that human element is a big part of my brand. And I think it's kept me excited about it over all these years. It's not sending a bottle to a distributor and not having an idea of where it's going, and so I'm physically handing it to the person across the table. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
To that point, the beers are, hyped in the sense people know about the brand and the beer and the adjuncts, but they're also phenomenal. And I think
thanks, man.
Oh, of course. And I think that, that helps build the brand. And, I have a lot of process questions, and I'll try and remember them all. But one of the first ones that I was thinking about was, in the best way I kind of thought about it was when you see this great singer-songwriter, the question is, do you write the song first or the lyrics? And I've always wondered that about someone who does the kind of small batch barrel work as you. Is it, are you designing the recipe for, these really nice barrels or these unique one-off barrels, or is it the other way around? You brew this beer and then look for a barrel that fits that?
No, it's the first that you mentioned, because a lot of the barrels I'm getting are just offered at completely random times, and I'll get really excited about the opportunity to use them, and I'll jump on it and come up with some idea. I've tried to taste everything, spirit wise, that I possibly can before I use the barrel. Getting like a Heaven Hill 27-year bottle of bourbon is not cheap. So, there's certain ones that are a little tougher. Might see one at a bar and grab an ounce pour instead of buying a bottle. But it's definitely tailored around the barrel at this point. And I definitely am, with that in mind, I'm going probably 3 to 5 gravity Plato points higher than typical. Putting them in pretty thick and viscous with long barrel aging in mind to get that full spirit character out of them.
Yeah.
Without thinning them out too much.
So do you have like a set of, base beers that you can plug and play a little bit, or is it scratch each time?
It's 4 different base stout recipes at this point.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I tinkered with the stout was probably would have been about a year ago, because it's a project that the goal is to quadruple oak something, and having the body in mind, using a lot more malted oats and wheat, just making that thing as thick as possible without going overboard on the sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say there's definitely some barrels that if they came along, I would probably tinker with it, but I am comfortable at the same time with where I'm at now. And, the first one is very similar to what you and I went back and forth about 8 years ago when we first made Predation, and that really hasn't changed much.
Yeah, I know that back then I was hesitant to make it thick, and if you were to try that batch now, it'd probably be like water compared to some of the stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy, like how far that's come, and kind of being the first, or at least one of the first people to do those kind of beers on the West Coast. I definitely had that reaction from a lot of collaborating brewers at the beginning. I still get it, to be honest.
Well, and there's a difference between just brewing a big beer, which is phenomenally easy to do, and then brewing a big beer that the complexity in the body, represent what your target is, and that becomes increasingly more difficult.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate to have that first recipe kind of hit on all those cylinders. Not being too cloying, but having viscosity and having some roast to balance things out. Like, that was always important to me from the get-go. And I don't know. I'm not going to say it's luck, but some of it was.
Sure. Well, it's easy to be lucky when you're singularly focused like you are. I think you kind of make your own luck at that level. But in that same vein, that when you're going into these barrels, do you have a gravity and an ABV based on the spirit? Does that change?
Not really. I'm kind of thinking more now like single, double, triple oak on where I want to land. So, like, if I'm gonna double oak something, I don't mind if it goes in at like 11% ABV, because it's gonna probably pick up a minimum of 4% across those next 2 barrels. I'll typically go in at like 13-14% into like a crazy barrel, like a Pappy barrel or something that I think I only want it to be in that one. I don't know what's going to happen with some of these triple and quadruple oak beers. I think they're going to push the 20% envelope. I just had one tested, actually. It was 20.3%. So, you get into like almost port-like consistency at that point, with legs and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that I've kind of mastered that part of it yet. Just kind of going where I think like the ABV threshold doesn't get too high. Just kind of pretending that 2% is going to happen each time you oak it, I guess, would be what I'm trying to get after.
And then build the body to make up for that.
Yeah, just keep it, I went in grossly thick into the ones that I'm triple and quadruple oaking. Like, you wouldn't want to drink that beer out of stainless without seeing oak.
Yeah.
And
Are you
go ahead.
are you, I mean, with that many barrels, are you afforded the ability to be like selective on barrels within a lot? Are you going and picking these barrels, or do you have reputation, like, good relationships with these brokers?
Both. I used to go to Kentucky, into the actual distilleries even, and I've been doing single barrel picks with a lot of distilleries, and then selling the juice that comes out of those at a buddy of mine's liquor store out in Corona. So it's a mixed bag, but like when the crazy stuff comes along, let's say, hey, I got a dozen Pappy 20 barrels. Do you want them? Yeah, I want them all. Like I'm not going to go out there and look at them. It's kind of like putting my trust in the person that's selling me them, and being very fortunate to have that opportunity.
Now, so we have some stout aging in some nicer barrels now that we've been holding on to, some Rip Van Winkle and stuff.
Awesome.
Are you able to see, I guess, so I know you're trying the spirit, or trying to try all the spirits before you use it. Are you seeing a direct correlation between the flavor of the spirit and the flavor of the beer, or is it, more complex than that? Is it the wood? Is it a mix of everything?
I think the three things I look at are, or that I've noticed, is the higher age statements. They're typically mellower, and those are the ones I'm single oaking most of the time, because it takes a while to get that out of there. It's great when it does, but it's not like put it in for 8 to 12 months and it's ready to go type of thing. Like I don't even taste them until the 14-month mark, pretty much. I think having something like Stag, I think the year I first got them, I want to say the proof on the one was like 144. So it was like rocket fuel, what was coming out of there. And I knew like that beer was going to take on a lot of spirit character. So having that in mind, I made a very sweet stout base. I don't know if that's answering the question that you're trying to get after, but I think looking for the strength, the time it was in the barrel, and then the mash bill. Like if you can really pick out the heavy corn or rye, like the spice character, that kind of thing would be the third thing I look at.
Yeah, definitely. Do you ever find like these great barrels and you put a great beer in them, and the end result is very good but needs blending? Or
Absolutely.
You see that?
Yep, absolutely. And
when
I
you're doing
haven't
such small runs, how do you predict that? Do you have like, for every bottle you need, do you have twice as much beer in case you need to do something?
So the way now that I'm approaching it is I'll approach it as I really want this to be a single barrel and I want it to be non-adjunct.
Mm-hmm.
And I determine if that first thing is a possibility. And if I'm like, well, it's got this really cool like caramel brown sugar thing going on its own. Maybe this would work well with coconut or vanilla. Then I think about it that way. I don't really have a game plan until that point if something doesn't turn out the way I want it to. It's kind of a reaction.
Sure.
So like the biggest blends I've done have been, I think, 6 barrels on a stout. And I'm blending. I'll take something that's super oaky, tannic, and just like dry and old school, and blend it with something that's still really sweet in the barrel that didn't quite take on as much spirit character as I wanted it to, and kind of do that one-to-one relationship. And that's been successful for me in the past. And then really crazily lately, I've allowed others to choose 3 barrels of their liking and do blends. I did it with 3 stouts with the guys that help me wax and label all the time at my spot, and then had my really good friend do one with a barley wine, and then just had my parents do one and then let them choose the adjuncts that went into it. So that's been kind of a new adventure, which has been fun. And none of those beers would be what I would choose, but I wasn't gonna put out something I didn't approve of, and I liked all 6 of them, so no complaint.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Moving on to adjuncts. I just every time I do a beer with you, I'm just like, all right, we'll put like a pound of vanilla in it, and then you're like, per gallon, or what are we doing here? So I've been over the years slowly trying to catch up to you and justify it, and I make less money each time I brew a stout.
Yeah.
But what's your ethos on a few ingredients I'll ask you about? But one of them is vanilla.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 years ago when we're doing stouts, you could pick Madagascar, Tahitian, a couple other ones would pop up. But now, like, I go through a vanilla broker who's got 60 different varieties from every, reasonable continent, dozens of countries, different varieties genetically of vanilla, and in different growing regions and terroir and stuff like that. So how are you able to navigate the world of vanilla right now?
Honestly, I've just been experimenting and then sticking with what I've liked. I've loved Congo. The few Brazilian ones I've had have been really cool to me, but for like a consumer palate, I don't think people are looking for tobacco and earthiness from vanilla as much as they are like sweet and fruity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I use Ted Jones Vanillas of the World quite a bit. And it's been, I mean, I've noticed stuff from Fiji and Comoros and just all these crazy places lately. I haven't even tried any of those yet. I want to. I think the way I'm approaching it is just being a nerd and wanting to try all of them and hoping some of them are great and some of them are good and none of them are terrible. It's like when you have that many things to choose from now, it's hard. And I admittedly do them on smaller batches with the new ones. But I have used Congo quite a bit lately.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to use Ugandan primarily before that.
Yeah, we've always, Ugandan's been one we've used a lot. I've never used Congo, and I've been seeing you use it a lot, so I definitely want to take a look at that one. But I mean, is there a tried and true application for vanilla? Are you doing the same amount of days, weeks, months for every beer? Or
No. It's all to taste. It's some varieties, honestly, like 2 days of contact time is enough, and then others need like a week-long heavy research. I think everything I do really is to taste, and that's how I've gotten to these ginormous, scary adjunct ratios too. It's like I use real stuff, and it takes a long time or a lot of product to have that flavor come through a lot of the time, and just tasting it until I'm satisfied with it. And I've said it a lot. If I put something on a label, I want somebody to be able to taste it in there. Mm-hmm. And that's not always cheap, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with coconut, when you're having me fill my entire bright take with coconut and we get like 20% efficiency.
Yeah, I just did a beer with over 3 pounds per gallon and lost the majority of the beer, but I am very happy with the final product, although there's not many bottles to be had.
Yeah. Are you doing the same thing, like just a couple days on the coconut?
Yeah, I haven't changed the way I've done coconut at all.
Yeah.
And for those listening, like, I know you know, but just kind of treat it like you're having your morning tea. Let it sit there until you get the flavor extraction that you want.
Are you then pulling it out and putting it in a bright tank or something, or are you packaging straight from that vessel?
Straight from that vessel a lot of the time. I like the way I've done coffee and stuff in the past. I'll just have bags in the bright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know coffee's kind of, something that you've, and whether or not people realize it, something that you've kind of perfected the nuance of these really cool different roasts and different varieties.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I think that would be part of the Horace legacy, is using coffee that kind of replaces the roasted malt in a beer and gives you that balance without giving you overpowering or acidic or peppery or astringent. Like, kind of just found what worked for me and what varieties I liked, which happen to be a lot of the most expensive ones out there, unfortunately. But they have this crazy nutty and vanilla character that really bounce off those other adjuncts when you use them too. So I think people have been really receptive of my methods with that over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, I've got more questions, but first we're going to take a short break for this message and then come right back for more of the conversation with Kyle Harrop of Horace Aged Ales.
First Tee is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. They've been working with brewers on a wide range of ingredients and delicious beers. First Tee combines the flexibility of order sizes with the experience you need to create innovative and successful tea beers. They get you the most direct from farm tea selection, so you are working with flavorful and consistent products. You can find more about First Tee's collaborations with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting blog.firsttee.com. That's blog.firstea.com.
Welcome back. I think we got vanilla, coconut, and coffee, but something that I've been hesitant to play around with, I suppose, is our nuts. Hazelnuts and pistachios and stuff like that. What's your experience with adding those to a finished beer?
It's ironic that I just said what Horace legacy would be, because it probably would be hazelnut, to be honest. Yeah. So I've always treated them as you're adding food to a beer, is the way I look at it. And you're adding something with a lot of fat to a beer, and you need to be very careful. With that said, I've had a number of infections, and most of them have stemmed from almonds. I've caught all but 2 of them before packaging. It's risky. I don't know how else to say it. You buy a product and you trust the person you're buying it from, and you're toasting it and doing everything you can to sanitize it, but it's just impossible at times. And I don't think there's a rhyme or reason to when something can get messed up. My method is basically taking nuts, throwing them in some kind of food processor and getting the surface area glow, not dusting them, but a lot smaller than they come. I buy most of them whole and unroasted, unsalted, just from nuts.com. And I bake them myself, and I go a lot further than I think a lot of people would. They're, borderline black because, one, I'm trying to kill the bad stuff, but what I'm trying to do is bring out that nutty flavor. And, I think the funny thing I always hear about hazelnuts is, oh, I bought raw ones and I had them in the beer for a week and you couldn't even taste it. It's definitely like they're hard to pull that flavor out. And the flavor I look for is almost like a butterscotch caramel kind of nuttiness. And when that when that goes into a beer, it's weird to say you want a stout to taste buttery, but that's kind of what I'm going for with that nut in particular. I want it to have that savory component. And no, it's not, diacetyl butter popcorn, because anyone that can detect that in one of my beers over 13 or 14%, if it did exist, is they're an alien or have some kind of palate that I don't know exists. So I think pushing the roasting to a certain extent, and not being scared of going too far, and then using a lot of them. I use a ton, and I lose a lot of volume. They soak up a lot of liquid, and it's part of doing things the right way. I've tasted a lot of hazelnut beers over the years. I asked one person what they used, and I tasted 20 beers after that I could tell you was the same exact product. And I've never had someone say that about my hazelnut beers, and that's because I go over the top and push them to the farthest extreme I think you can.
Yeah. I mean, I think hazelnut's one of those complex flavors that we know the synthetic extract taste more than we know the actual taste.
Absolutely. Like the 7-Eleven coffee pump.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, a big thing too, like, it's no secret, vanilla will bring out the hazelnut flavor more, and I like to pair it with coffee too, especially geisha, because it's already got a nuttiness character to it. So just using it in things that'll let it shine, and making a sweeter stout base as a canvas for it to stand out is the way I approach them.
Yeah. And is it sacrilege to ever look into, using nut flour? Have you ever experimented that and pan toasting it or whatever?
I never have. I wouldn't say it's sacrilegious. It's real nut product. I think that's dehydrated and basically like processed down to sand as far as surface area. So I know a lot of people that use like peanut flour and stuff with decent results. I've just kind of done it the same way since my homebrewing days, and that worked for me. So I haven't really ventured out with those other ways.
Do you have any new secret ingredients that you want to share?
Ooh, secret ingredients. Yeah, honey. Since I started making mead professionally, I've started really using it in beer. I made a few brackets that did well at Mazer Cup this past year, and have a lot more coming. Kind of treating those big beers like a mead and feeding them during secondary fermentation. A little sugar here and there. Honey is not the easiest fermentable, but it can add a ton of complexity to your beer. And yeah, that's been fun. I don't know what that future holds, but there's going to be a lot of brackets coming out of Horace.
Heck yeah. The dive into mead making.
Yeah.
Have you seen a direct translation from your skill as a brewer as far as adjuncting? I mean, you've got a different base to work with, but I assume there's some parallels.
Yeah, I think it's kind of come full circle, to be honest, because I made more mead at home than I ever did beer. And the most important book to me, like from a fermentation standpoint, when I was growing up, was the Ken Schramm's Complete Mead Maker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helped my beer making. And then to go back on the mead side now, yeah, I would say it was pretty awesome doing a lot of like the fruit in the mixed ferm beers first on a larger scale, and now doing it with the meads definitely helped from a confidence standpoint as well. Meads are not cheap to make. I mean, yeah, these stouts are crazy expensive, especially when you adjunct them and account for the barrels and everything, but like mead is on a whole nother level.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You talked about adding sugar during secondary.
Yeah.
And that's something I've done once and was very happy with it, but it was so frightening to do. We were doing it in the barrel, kind of utopia inspired. Is that something that you do regularly, or is it just a trick that you have up your sleeve?
In stainless, I do it quite a bit. I've never done it in the barrel. Yeah, I think like using things like Belgian candy syrup, like I use that D90 stuff a lot to get like that marshmallow milk chocolate character in the fermenter, is quite cool. And I've definitely used honey a lot lately. Honey, the reason I do it that way is I think you're just going to piss off the yeast if you dump it in the whirlpool. And you don't really want to boil it because you're going to caramelize it and bochet it to a point that it's going to kind of ruin the complexity. And you knowing me, I'm using a lot of like crazy varietals I can get my hands on. It's a lot of Hawaiian honeys and meadow foams and different like fruit blossom honeys. So I don't want to hide that character. So
Yeah.
I think that's really the only way to do it right in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. Outside of the mead endeavor, what's in the future for you and for Horace?
More of the same. I think the barrel program is just going to continue to evolve, and instead of double barrels, you're going to start seeing some triple barrels and quadruple barrels. I've got some really cool stuff in the works. I'm doing my favorite bottle shop of all time asked me to make their 25th anniversary beer. They're up in Seattle, which I'm pretty sure you just made a barley wine for. I am making my favorite album growing up. Like I was a senior in high school when it came out, was Thrice Artist in the Ambulance, and it's their 20th anniversary next year. So I'm making a beer with the band for that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. A few more Run the Jewels collabs in the works. And I just had the 2 Anchorage collabs released this past weekend in Alaska. And those were like a dream because The Deal with the Devil is my favorite beer on the planet. And we blended 2 of my double barrel aged barley wines with 2 of his double barrel aged Deal with the Devils. So I haven't even tasted the final product yet in the bottle form. It's waiting for me at home when I get home from Florida. So yeah, I would say like stuff I'm excited about for the future would be being able to see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time and haven't been to many fests lately. Haven't seen you in like 3 years. So
yeah,
I definitely miss everybody, and I'm sprinkling collabs in a lot these past 6 months. Just did a few this trip that I'm on currently, and that'll be kind of the norm through the end of summer, and then we'll see. I got, as you know, a soon-to-be 3-year-old and a 6.5-year-old, so that, a wife, and another job is a lot.
It's enough, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss not to talk about Christale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, would you explain the beer and what drove you to be an insane person?
Have you tried it yet? I don't know if you have or not.
No, I've been trying to get my hands on it, but I hear great things.
Yeah, so my mindset was I use a shitload of double roasted crystal and extra dark, and I'm a crystal malt fiend between my barley wines and my stouts. And I've read a lot about diastatic and why people shy away from crystal malts, et cetera, et cetera. So my approach to it was basically do something that made sense to me that didn't make sense to anyone else. Taking something that I know what the flavor profile is going to be, but getting it to ferment. And sugar is your best friend on that style of beer, and it tastes disgusting out of a tank. It absolutely needs to go into a barrel and take on that oak character. It was an experiment that exceeded my expectations, and it caused me to brew 4 more pretty close after I saw that turning point, which was the 14 to 16 month mark, if I recall, on that one. The first one I made is still in barrel. It's been in there for over 2 years now.
Wow.
It's not quite where I want it yet, but it's close. I'd always describe it as an English barley wine meets a wee heavy. It's very caramel and toffee forward. And I think a lot of people expected it to be quite sweet, but it's got like this nutty, almost like shortbread biscuit character and a very cast forward backbone to it. So it all just kind of works good together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you had brewers reaching out, brewing their own versions of it?
Yeah, there's been a couple, I would say about a dozen now. I've done 2 collabs elsewhere with them, and I'm going to do one at Pulpit Rock soon, which will be cool because I brewed their first barley wine with them 3 years ago, and the third and final piece of that project is coming out this weekend. So nice. It'll be their first Christale clearly when I go back out too. But no, I definitely look forward to traveling and brewing those with friends, and I'd love to brew one at Wren House when the time comes. I think you'd love it. And,
yeah.
I'm really obsessed with Munich wines too. Like Brad really hit something there. Like the fruit and nut profile on those beers is so cool. Mm-hmm. And it's rad. I think between the two of us, very like-minded, and just weren't really scared to push the envelope. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't know what to call it. I was going to call it like an English barley wine with only crystal malt or something, but once I saw Brad do the Munich wine thing, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to own this.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the day, it's mine. And I think that's awesome. Like, I came up with that shit. Not everyone's going to love it, but the people that do like really appreciate it. And they're like, wow, that was outside of the box. And it's not just another adjunct stout.
Oh, absolutely. And the surreal nature of in 10 years being at some pub and drinking one that someone else you've never met brewed is going to be just wild.
Yeah, I had that experience with the Braggot recently, and I'm not saying like I'm the first person to do a braggot, but like, I think out of a lot of people I've talked to, it kind of like made them, I don't know if it like legitimized it to them, but it made them feel like they could sell one if they made it. And kind of take the approach of, this is going to be barrel aged. Hey, if I want to put fruit in it, I'm going to put fruit in it. Like, and I think that's kind of where beer is for me. It's like, don't go by the book, like do what you want to do, push that envelope. And like, if you think an adjunct is going to go well on something, try it. Like, the worst thing that's going to happen is it's a dumpster fire and you pour it down the drain. But like, doing the same shit over and over again is going to drive somebody nuts.
Well, I mean, that's good to hear, because I have a braggot I brewed with Sati Pasha 4.5 years ago that's still in barrels because I'm too scared to release it.
I need to come taste that.
It's the good news is it's gotten even better the last year, but I'm going to hit a point of no return soon. So I promise I'll bottle it one of these days.
Oh, that's awesome. I just met Timo at Lost Cause a few weeks ago. He was out making a mead with Billy.
Oh, nice. Yeah, super nice guy.
Yeah, he was rad.
Heck yeah. And I guess the most important question I have is, what are the Phoenix Suns' chances of winning it all?
So
100% or 80% are the two choices I have here.
I think 8 teams have a chance this year. My favorite team, the Lakers, is not one of them. I don't see it happening. I would love them to, but I think Boston and Milwaukee in the East, and I think, New Orleans looks really good. You can't ever count the Warriors out. The Suns are up there. They're in the top 4. How's that?
Yes. You heard it here first, folks.
This is pre-Lakers blockbuster trade, which they're about to pull off something, I have a feeling, in the next week or two.
Yeah, and it's pre the Suns getting a few more injuries.
Yeah, didn't Chris Paul just come back? He's been hurt,
kind of.
Right? Okay. Minutes.
I mean, he was there.
Okay.
And then we were down 48 points or something. So.
Oh boy. They played Boston last night, right?
Yeah.
Ouch. Yeah.
Not excited. Maybe we can win the West again.
Yeah.
Well, right on, man. That's all I've got. I really appreciate you taking the time and answering some of the questions I've had, and I'm sure a lot of the other people in the industry have had. So thanks a lot for taking the time out.
No problem. Good talking to you, dude. I hope to see you soon.
Heck yeah. Yeah, we'll get together soon. I'll get on the phone with you tomorrow.
Sounds good, man.
And enjoy and give your best to your family and all that.
Thanks, you too.
All right. Well, Kyle will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of his choosing. And that will be on the air in 2 weeks. So make sure you tune in for that and visit allaboutbeer.com. Follow on social media, and to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. I am Preston Thoeny of Wren House Brewing, and thank you for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast.
This episode was brought to you by First Tea. First Tea delivers the ingredients and experience brewers need for delicious beers and innovative flavors, flexible order sizes, and direct from farm teas for your next brew. Find out more about First Tea by visiting blog.firsttea.com. That's blog.firsdtea.com.